So these are bush blue lake green beans. They're my favorite beans to grow for fresh eating, and they preserve really well too. So welcome to my organic garden. Come on in closer. I'm going to show you how to harvest them, and then I'm going to show you how to snap them, put them in jars, and preserve them.
All I have needs, I have not provided.
So there's some young beans here that probably have another week to go, and this one I'm going to leave for another day or two. But down towards the bottom, we've got fully mature beans that I want to harvest without disturbing the little smaller beans that need a couple more weeks. When you're picking your green beans, just pull them straight up and they'll snap right off. You have to be careful not to pull the entire plant up, or you're not going to be able to harvest these beans that are still growing. So take them one at a time and pull upward. Pull them upward. Bush blue lake green beans are very prolific. They're resistant to disease. If they do get rust on them, they recover quite quickly if you will treat them with sulfur. Be sure to watch my video about how to treat downy mildew and rust in your garden. So pull them upward. Okay, back. Straighten up. Straighten back up. So this is what I got the first picking. I didn't need 2 pots after all, but I'm pleased. I am going to be storing some of this in the refrigerator until the next time I come out and pick. And between the 2 pickings, I'll have enough to can. I did promise someone I would give them fresh green beans today, and I'm sure we will have fresh green beans too. I like to get my workstations all set up before I actually do the work. I picked 2 pots of green beans so far. So the first day I picked 1 big pot, and 2 days later I picked another big pot of green beans. I've got a glass of tea ready. I washed my jars. I washed the lids and the rims. Now, one thing that you need to know about reusing lids, it is not USDA approved, but I do it. I just look at the rubber part of the rings and make sure that they're intact, and I make sure there's no rust on the inside of the lids. The rings can be used over and over again. My canner is on the stove and ready to be filled. First, I have to wash those beans. if you pick green beans and you can't can them on the same day, simply put them in a Debbie Meyer bag and put them in the refrigerator. Don't wash them. You wash them on the day that you're going to can. That way they're not going to spoil inside that bag. Now, I'm a firm believer in Debbie Meyer bags. They will keep your vegetables for a long time. So look for them on Amazon, and sometimes the produce department in your grocery store will carry them. There's more than one way to get your beans ready to go in the jars. And this is one way that some people prefer. You got to get them all lined up. And you're going to cut off the ends. Okay? And then about once every inch, make another slice. But now here's where the problem lies. Once you've made a couple of slices, now you got to decide, I think I can make one more slice, and then I have all these awkward ends. So then you got to pick through all of them and line them all up again. That's just not my preferred way. And besides, you got to stand here at the counter and do it. And I prefer to sit outside and enjoy the sounds of nature while I snap my beans. So come on out to the porch with me and let's just relax for a while. It's a windy day, but I am shielded from all the wind that's coming across this way. And it's actually a very beautiful day if you can get out of the wind. You may have wondered, what is the sheet all about? See? Pick the ends off, snap the beans right here. You don't have to worry about being precise where you throw the ends. Super, super easy. Come on and watch over my shoulder and see how I'm doing this. Sit back, relax in your chair, and get to work. Break off an end, break off an end, snap, snap. Break off an end, break off an end, snap, snap. Some of my old-timer friends call this breaking beans. Once you get the rhythm, it goes by really, really quick. Some beans have a string. Bush Blue Lake typically does not. If your beans have a string, you find the little curlicue at the end. You see it? And you pull it backwards, and that should zip a string off. So I'm just going to demonstrate on this one, though I know it doesn't have a string. And you would pull it, then you flip your bean around, and you do the other side, and you'll pull that string down. That's why I like Bush Blue Lake. You don't have to worry about strings. As I'm sitting here snapping these beans, I'm just reminded of a story that an old gardener friend told me a long time ago. So the setting of this story would be probably in the 1950s, possibly the 1960s. Her kids were grown, but they all gardened together. And so they would go out into the field and pick bushels of green beans. And then the women would bring those bushels of beans up underneath the trees. And here in Florida, it's pretty hot. Probably hot where you are in the summertime too. But it would be so hot, they would soak their clothes with water and drape towels around their shoulders and sit out underneath those trees and snap beans together. I just think that's such a cool story that they would all preserve their produce together and they all farmed together. I've never had that situation and I kind of longed for that time. But I had my kids and they helped me with the big garden that we had. And those are great memories too. We had 7 kids. And so you can imagine to have a garden big enough to feed 7 kids. It was big. I would go out early in the morning and pick about a bushel of beans. And I would bring them inside just as the kids were getting up. And I would start washing the beans. And by the time they were settled into the living room with a big sheet on the floor, I would hand them the beans that were washed in various pots that I had. And they would snap or break the beans while I was getting the jars ready. And by the time they had enough beans snapped for me to get that first canner going, I was ready for their beans. And they would continue to snap beans until they were all snapped. And back then, I had 2 canners going, so I would get 2 runs of canners. So I would have 28 jars, quart jars of beans by that afternoon. And then we'd do it all over again in another 2 or 3 days. Great memories. Great memories. And they would all say that they're good memories for them now, even if they didn't like it back then. Join me as I garden through the seasons. I'll teach you how to grow lots of veggies, and we'll talk about the real things that happen in real gardens. And this is why I use a sheet. You just pick up the 4 corners and take it out to the compost pile. So now the 2 pots of beans have been snapped, and all that's left to do is fill the jars with beans, add some water and some salt, and get them in the canner. Super, super easy. Just fill your jars. Oh, that one didn't get snapped. Now, I like to tap mine down a little bit. Fill them up to the rim here. Set it to the side. Do the next one. About to the rim. Set it aside.
On to the next one. Let's see if I can fill the 7th one. Looks like it's going to do it. Not quite, so I'm going to take a few out of each jar just to make them even. I use whatever salt I have on hand. This says it's iodized. I was surprised when I read someone else say, don't use iodized salt. I've used it all my canning years. I put about a half a teaspoon of salt per quart. I do understand that you don't have to have salt. I just prefer to have a little bit of salt. You can use a teaspoon if you want. I just like the taste of about a half a teaspoon. Here's what I do. Better yet, here's what I don't do. I never even knew you were supposed to wipe the rims of your jars with vinegar. And so I've done it for many, many years without wiping the rims. The worst thing that could be on those rims, in my opinion, is water. The salt, I was careful not to get salt on the rims, and it certainly doesn't need to be dry. So if you want, take a rag or a paper towel, soak it with some vinegar, and wipe down the edges of your jars. A lot of people recommend doing that. I never have, so I don't want to do it. Now I have inspected all of these lids. They may be stained from tomato sauce being in it, but there's no rust. The rubber is intact. So I'm going to use it again, and I will tell you, this is not USDA approved. This is what I do. And I need to get another lid for that one. Now you're going to screw the rim on. You don't have to wrench it tight. Just put it on there so it's good. Just finger tight is the word that I hear being used a lot. And now they're ready for the canner. In the bottom of my canner, I have a rack. I don't fill it with water first because it makes it just too heavy to bring it over to the stove. So it's empty, has the rack, the jars go in. Okay, so there's 6 around and 1 in the middle, so you can fit 7 quarts in your canner. Once you have those set down in there, then you're going to add water until it gets about halfway up the jar. Now, if you want to, you can add some vinegar to your water, and that will keep that lime from building up around the outside of your jar. You don't have to do that. It just makes a prettier end product. Keeps that film off your jar. Now you need to put the lid on. Okay, so on this canner, there's an arrow right there. There's also an arrow right there. You have to match those up or you're not going to get this lid on. Now that sat down in there really good. Close it. And the last thing you're going to put on is this weighted jiggler that goes right here. Now, there are different styles of jigglers. This one's got this weight right here makes it 10 pounds. And that goes right on top there. And now it's ready for me to just turn the heat on and wait. While I'm waiting, I want to tell you a little bit about this jiggler. When this canner is completely done and the pressure has gone down, do not put that anywhere except in the same place that you know it needs to go every single time. The canner will not work without it. And the next time you want to can something, if you can't find it, you're going to be really, really upset. So mine goes in the back of a particular drawer every single time. It goes from here to the drawer. It does not go from here to here or anywhere else. It goes from here to the drawer. Take that to the bank. Trust me on this. Do you hear that sound? That's just the vent. Don't start counting your time yet. It's just the vent. Now we start counting. I've had this old home canning, preserving, freezing, drying book for a long time. I bought it used at a library sale. It's dated 1979. The information in it is still very good. Here's green beans. It says quarts. I go with 25. Now here it says add salt and boiling water. I've never done that either. I didn't read directions, did I? But I've always used the 25-minute count. So come right over here and I'm going to put the timer on. 25 minutes. Whoops. I'm going to go with 24 since it's been going for a couple of minutes. The other thing is you do not have to have that on high. As long as this jiggler jiggles 2-3 times a minute, the pressure is up inside. So I'm going to turn it down about halfway. And if it's still jiggling constantly after 3 or 4 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and turn it down just a little bit more. I think that's about where I set it to keep it jiggling enough to keep that pressure on. So that's just a little tip to help you save some energy. And so I'll see you back here in about 23 minutes. So the quart jars processed for about 25 minutes, and I was tired, left them in the canner overnight until I could get to them. So remember, we're going to put this away. And we just undo it. Now, if these were hot, you would need something like this to get them out. They're not hot. I really don't need to do this. So there's 7 quarts, which will keep in your cupboard for years. Actually, these won't last that long. I store mine without the rings. The rings have a tendency to rust, whether they're on the jar or not. I prefer not to have them on the jar if they're going to rust. So you made it all the way to the end of this video, and I really appreciate it. I hope it was helpful for you. Don't forget, subscribe, because I've got lots more to share with you.